G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We're pretty much positive at this point Chapter 3 is around the corner. This will be the last 2 weeks of Chapter 2, so I wanted to go back and give my thoughts on what the best seasons were, what the worst seasons were, and what I'm excited for in Chapter 3. This won't be a video on my wish list for Chapter 3, that will be coming out in a few days. If you want that, please chuck a like on the video, let me know in the comment section down below. But today is going to focus on Chapter 2. The best parts: we had Stark season, we had Water season, we had the Mythics, we had Grotto, and the worst parts: we had the Primal Shotgun, we had UFOs. We've had a lot of good and a lot of bad in Chapter 2, and today I want to give you my thoughts on it. Before we get into talking about Chapter 2 Season 1, we got to talk about Chapter 1 Season X, the last season of the chapter, because that was what kind of set the tone coming into the first season of the new chapter. It was crazy. It was like a fever dream. We were having massive updates every other week. There was so many items being added. There was mechs, there was shockwaves, there was slipstreams around the map. Like that season was the most hectic. It just felt insane. There was everything happening at all times. Some people loved it, some people hated it. A lot of people, like myself, were asking to kind of go back to something a little bit more chill, maybe something a bit more vanilla, and that is what we got. Chapter 2 Season 1 was the most chill and the most vanilla season ever. In my opinion, it might possibly be the most boring season we have ever had. It lasted 128 days. For reference, the longest season in Chapter 1 was 84 days, so you pretty much had over an entire month extra on top of that, and it was a season that just didn't have a lot to it. If this wasn't the first season of a new chapter where we had an entirely new map and a lot of hopes were high, I feel like it could have actually been the season that potentially killed Fortnite. If they dropped a season like Chapter 2 Season 1 now, and it lasted 128 days and had as little content as that season did, it would see a massive drop off in Fortnite. And I actually sadly believe this season is one of the seasons that did cause a massive drop off in Fortnite. That's when we lost a lot of the big content creators like Tim the Tatman and Nick Mercs. I know, Nick Mercs still plays occasionally. A lot of the other guys come back. Ninja is coming back and playing occasionally, but that was the season where people really started to look for other games and started to try to find something new, because this was the new chapter. This is what was next for Fortnite, and it felt like a step backwards. A lot of people liked it. Competitive kind of liked it. Other than nade stacking, competitive was pretty good because there wasn't anything too crazy. It was squads and it was a pretty vanilla meta, so there wasn't any like railguns, there wasn't any like ridiculous weapons, there was no mythics. It felt pretty good for competitive, but it was just boring. Like, you'd play arena, you'd play pubs, and the most exciting thing you could do was throw a nade and hit it perfectly on someone's head. Like, it just didn't have the content, and also it lost the nostalgia. It wasn't Chapter 1 anymore, so a lot of people started to feel like they were getting over Fortnite, they were moving on from Fortnite, so you now had a more boring season where there was new stuff, but the only stuff that was new was the map, and a lot of people wanted to go back to the old map. So I really do think Season 1 Chapter 2 was potentially one of the worst seasons of Fortnite, and I don't know if you guys agree or disagree. Now, Chapter 2 Season 2. This is where things started to turn around for Fortnite. This is where we started to bring it back. After almost 130 days of an incredibly vanilla, boring season, we jumped in straight off the gate, day one, with some of the most crazy stuff we've ever seen in Fortnite. We had mythics being added all around the map. We had 3 of the best POIs ever being introduced, in my opinion: Shark, Agency, and Grotto. So much fun. We had the introduction of the Henchman, which added an entirely new element. You could disguise, you could hide. The POIs felt really fun, really interesting, and really, really intense. Competitively, we started to have daily duos tournaments. It was a duo FNCS. We had some of the big content creator pro teams coming out. We had Tfue playing with scopes. It felt like a really exciting season, and I think it was one of the best for pubs and arena, and Mythics really made it that way. You had so many unique and fun places to drop. This was one of the best maps I think we've ever had in Chapter 2, and the gameplay felt amazing. One of the big negatives of Chapter 2 Season 2 was the aim assist. Now, don't come at me for that one. At the time, a lot of people defending, a lot of controller players saying it's fine. Since then, we've gone back, we've looked at the clips. It was basically aimbot during Chapter 2 Season 2. Like, aim assist was insane, especially when you had Sky's AR and the drum gun, which did so much damage already, and then you had the headshot multiplier was still at 2 times with no damage fall off, so you could basically triple dink people with most legendary ARs. It was a brutal time, but it was still incredibly fun because the season was so good and competitive was so hype. It did unfortunately get delayed, and I think that's what ruined a little bit of the hype of Chapter 2 Season 2. It ended up dragging out for 124 days, only 4 days less than Chapter 2 Season 1, so that was a little bit sad, and it was obviously because of the onset of COVID. It was because we started to go into global lockdown. A lot of Epic Games staff couldn't work the same hours they were working. Everything was going crazy, and Epic Games wasn't the only company to struggle during this time. So as sad as people were that it was happening, I think a lot of people understood, and people weren't too upset though, because it was still a really fun, really good season that by the end started to drag on a little bit. But if it was like a normal length time, like anything between maybe 60 to like 90 days, it would have been such a good season. I still think it was a really good season I'd be happy to go back to. Chapter 2, Season 3, one of my all-time favorite seasons. And I'm not just talking in Chapter 2, I'm talking in Chapter 1 as well. This was such a fun season. It was when the water got introduced. We got so much more water elements. You could now ride sharks. We had the boat that just randomly spawned around the map, which made a really cool, fun POI. But the map felt so incredibly different. I think it's one of the biggest map changes we have ever seen, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 combined, at the start of a new season. It was still some of the old drops that we knew, and a lot of the map wasn't covered in water, but then because there was that huge new element with the floating islands, it felt so unique. Fortilla came out. I really liked the mythics during this season. I think the fact that we had certain drops that had 2 mythics, like we had the burst rifle and we had the infinite chug jug, which I think was a really, really cool mythic I'd love to see come back. You couldn't just pop it in every single fight, but it was really cool if you wanted to play aggressive that you could get back to max health, max shield after every single fight, and it felt really, really good. This was a season that I very much enjoyed for arena and pubs. Competitively, some people didn't like it as much. I actually think the water wasn't so bad for competitive. Swimming and the ability to be able to swim on your rotates sped up the rotates a lot, but because it wasn't like deep water, like a lot of the water areas on the map now, you could still easily build and you wouldn't get stuck in the water a lot. So I actually really, really liked this season. It only lasted 68 days as well, so we went back to more of those condensed seasons with a lot of action and a lot of updates. I felt like the updates during this season were really good. The map kept changing because the water levels kept going up and down. At the time, I didn't appreciate it as much because when the water started to go away, it was just going back to a map that we basically had for 124 days before this. So that part I was a little bit upset about, but especially at the start of the season, it was awesome. It was the first time we had the introduction of the charge shotgun as well, which immediately a lot of people didn't like. That was one of the big downsides for a lot of people of Season 3. They didn't want to have to use the charge. They wanted to go back to the pump shotgun. But as someone who jumped on the charge bandwagon and really enjoyed it at the start and liked having to learn new mechanics and change their playstyle and not just make it try to work like a pump, I actually picked up the charge and treated it like a different weapon. It was really fun and unique for me. That was a huge gameplay shift and really shook up the meta that we've been playing since the start of Chapter 1. The pump was the shotgun from the start of Chapter 1, and we finally had a bit of spice. Chapter 2, Season 4. Now, this is the one that just pretty much has everyone excited. It was a really, really good season for competitive and for the casual player. This is probably when we saw the biggest rise in content being made by pros because Arena was so much fun. Obviously, halfway through the season. Let's slow down a little bit. Chapter 2, Season 4 started off really, really good. This was the first major collaboration we'd ever seen in Epic. We've had collaborations before this, and we had Gotham, we've had other things change the game, but nothing like Marvel changed the game. We had full skins in the game. The battle pass was amazing. We had POIs dedicated to them. We had weapons dedicated to them. All the mythics came in. It was a Marvel season, and it truly was incredibly fun because we had those mythics still in there. But this season obviously has most of its hype going into the fact that it had the biggest mid-season update that we have ever seen, and arguably the best we've ever seen. I think honestly, unarguably the best we've ever seen. Stark Industries just emerging from the map, everything changing. That POI will go down as one of the greatest POIs ever. It gave a spot on the map that was fun to drop at, and you could get god loot every time, or you'd instantly go down and then you'd play again. It's why the pros loved it. You dropped there, you either dropped 15 kills and walked out with a god loadout, or you went down. It was constant action. It was somewhere on the map that you knew you could drop where you were gonna get a fight, but you were gonna walk away with the loot that was worth it. Now, a lot of people actually weren't as much of a fan of this. Towards the end of the season, I started to get a little bit annoyed with how dead the games would be. Half the lobby would drop with Stark, half of them would die there. So unless you wanted to 50-50 Stark and die there, you basically had this really quiet, boring game until you eventually ran into the guy who won Stark, who would then dominate you. This is also because I came from a region with longer queue times, so I couldn't just get those instant 10-second queues and hot drop Stark, so it felt a bit more frustrating for me. But overall, this season was still phenomenal. Competitively, I think it wasn't the best season for me, only because Stark and Dooms especially were such good drops that pretty much the whole discussion of the season was around who's gonna win, who's dropping Dooms, who's dropping Starks, and it kind of ruined that fun a little bit. But overall, I still think Season 4 was an absolutely amazing season. Chapter 2, Season 5. This was actually one of my favorite seasons of the chapter, and I think that's where I confuse a lot of people. It seems to be the season where things started to go downhill a little bit for Fortnite, the season where people started having less fun, but I really liked the sand mechanics. I really liked the sand in the middle of the map, but the main reason why I liked this season was it was really fun for Arena with the gold mechanic. The fact that you could easily do bounties and recycle bounties and then upgrade your weapons relatively cheaply added a fun element to me. It meant that playing Arena smart actually worked. I would pretty much play 8 hours a day, every day, dropping Misty with my good friend Josh. We'd play duo Arena. We would just cycle bounties, upgrade all our weapons. I love the dragon shotgun too. I think that's one of the main reasons why this season was so much fun to me. I would run dragon shotgun tack. I was that kid that all of you guys hated. I would shoot the tack deliberately at the start of the fight to make them think that I had a tack shotgun so they'd play more aggressive. And as soon as they went on my wall, I would edit dragon shotgun them. I've got that boomer aim. I don't have good edits or building, but at that time I could hit my shots with the dragon shotgun and it felt really fun. It did seem like a bit of a letdown when it came to updates though. There was really no good mid-season updates or updates at all. The only updates we really got was to do with collaborations. We kept seeing Agent Jonesy go around and picking people up and bringing them to Fortnite, and then it would just be a skin. Like, yeah, we got Mandalorian, but that was just one sniper in the game and then a hut on the hill. It wasn't like a huge Stark change. It wasn't like Gotham. It wasn't even a POI. It was literally just one building or two buildings on the side of a mountain. And the Mando sniper was kind of fun. It was a cool weapon. I think it was interesting. It stuck very true to the actual Mandalorian sniper, which I liked, but it wasn't incredibly fun like Chapter 2 Season 2 Mythics. It was just a bit of a meme, and overall I still really enjoyed this season, but I could see why other people didn't, is when we really did start to see a lack of mid-season content and updates, and it didn't drag on that long as a season, but it kind of felt like it did because of the lack of new content. All right, we have to talk about this. Chapter 2, Season 6, the Primal season. I wish I could skip it. This season was terrible. This season was awful. It was the season that almost killed Fortnite. Let's be honest. I feel like I enjoyed it more than most people for a few select reasons. First off, I love bows. Anytime there's a bow in a game, I just think it's really cool. I did like the crafting mechanic. I thought the crafting mechanic of the Primal season was really awesome. I'm excited to still see crafting around. I wish they could add it into the game a little bit more, but the makeshifts were terrible. Oh my gosh, the makeshift guns were absolutely awful. Plus, you had that combined with the fact that the Primal shotgun was the most broken weapon we've ever seen. You could be like Mongrel Mitra, Benji Fishy level good with a gold spaz, and you're probably still gonna lose to a kid who picked up a green Primal shotgun. And you guys remember, I'll do it one more time. I did it a whole bunch of times. Doof, 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 doof. Just walking into your box, just straight through you. It was so incredibly unfun. I kind of just did it as a meme. I would pick up the Primal shotgun, just run at people for a laugh because I didn't consider myself incredibly good at the game. I wasn't trying to really get better. I just found it funny to abuse a weapon that was just absolutely terrible. But towards the end, once they nerfed the Primal shotgun, it started to get a little bit better. Mid-season updates, they pretty much completely got rid of the whole makeshift Primal concept of the game. They made it way easier to upgrade weapons, and they made you get way more mechanical parts. So basically everyone was just making pumps and regular ARs, and the Primal aspect of the game was forgotten. So the only way the season got better was when Epic basically put in updates to undo everything they did with the season. Also, as far as map changes go, we only really got the Spire, which is one of the worst parts of the map we have ever seen. It was just annoying as far as verticality goes. It had a mythic boss at it that would shoot you through walls. It had no loot, so if you dropped there to try to get the mythic Primal because it was broken, you just had no loot, and it was like one of the biggest RNG drops ever. So as much as the zipline concept was kind of fun and it gave an interesting part of the middle of the map, to actually drop and play at it on drop was terrible. So yeah, let's leave Primal season in the past, and as you can see with, you know, season 5 being not everyone's favorite, season 6 being possibly the worst season we've ever had, and it really dropped off the player base as well, you can see the story of chapter 2 going downhill a little bit here. Chapter 2, Season 7, this one was an interesting one because it's when we started to really have that big divide between pubs and arena, and some people really liked it. A lot of people telling me this was the season that brought back their casual friends, jumping on, getting in spaceships, blasting people, railguns, recon scanners. It's where pubs really started to go crazy because arena started to have none of the stuff added to it, which is something I've always argued for. I think the main reason why this season did potentially miss the mark was the UFOs though. I think even a lot of casuals did not find the UFOs fun. It was just, it wasn't fun to use, and it was even less fun to verse. If you were trying to fight or do anything anything and you've just got 2 or 3 UFOs, just doof, 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 doof. There was like absolutely nothing you could do to counter it. It was just really, really unfun to verse. But then if you were in the UFO, it didn't really feel that fun either. You were just kind of holding down left click and releasing and just hitting them with a ball. So I think that part of the season really did actually hurt it. I think the UFOs was one of the worst vehicles we've had in the game, up there with mechs, for just how unfun they were to verse, but also to use. But outside of that, the railgun, the recon scanner, I think the whole abduction theme in pubs was really cool. You get to play that mini game, get some good loot, drop out. That did change the pacing of Fortnite a lot though, which I don't think they considered too much. When half the lobby was in the spaceship, you couldn't find them or fight them, and then all of a sudden you saw this giant influx of players drop into the map with really good loot. It did mess up the pacing a little bit, but overall it was pretty fun. Competitively felt a bit boring because this is when, you know, not even competitive, more arena. This is when we started to get what we've been asking for a really long time, to have pubs and arena basically completely split as far as loot pool goes. But we started to realize is maybe not what we want, where right now Epic needs to pick make arena competitive where it has a good rank system but it doesn't have fun loot, or start adding some fun stuff to arena. It needs to be one or the other, because right now, and that season especially, arena just felt really, really stale, and that storyline has now continued into this current season. So I think Chapter 2 Season 7 was a good season. It wasn't bad, it wasn't terrible, but I don't think it was amazing either. And that now leaves us in Chapter 2 Season 8, our current season. And honestly, I think this is a good season. I think it's a little bit of fun. I think the balancing is good there right now. Competitive has felt awesome because we've had FNCS and then the Grand Royale. I want to see how this season would have gone if we didn't have Grand Royale. Outside of that though, the map is starting to get a little bit stale. We aren't really getting those huge content updates like we'd hoped for. We're getting weapon updates, which is really, really cool. Having the new weapons added into pubs has been a fun change. I think the shockwaves are way too common. That is one of the things that's hurting this season a lot when it comes to pubs and just playing it in general. Everyone has a shockwave launcher. Everyone is constantly running, where on the flip side, arena has had nothing added to it whatsoever. So arena is feeling incredibly stale and incredibly boring. Late game arena has kind of helped revive that a little bit. A lot of people spending a lot of their time in late game arena rather than regular arena, but that's only hurting the queue times of regular arena even more, which is making it even less fun and even more boring. So we need a change to arena pretty soon, or we need to start adding some of the fun things from pubs into arena and just accept that it's not competitive. But overall across the board, I think this season's been a good one. It looks like the pacing has been really, really good. It's a fast season, but I think these last few weeks probably would have really dragged on if it wasn't for the fact of, oh my gosh, Chapter 3 is next. Like, I truly think the hype right now being generated in videos like mine, Cypher PK, a lot of the leakers talking about it, I think that general focus shifting from what are we playing now to, oh my gosh, what do we have in a couple of weeks, is what's really making the end of this season feel quite fresh. Because right now, without Grand Royale, without competitive, the end of this season hasn't really had that much added to it. Like I said, we are getting those votes for weapons coming in. We've had the mechs come in, but again, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just so hyper focused on what's next, I'm not appreciating what we're getting right now. I think it's a good season, but to me, when I look back on this, if we get Chapter 3 next, this season will always feel like the in-between season. It'll always feel like the one that progressed the storyline and got us into what was happening next. I really do hope Chapter 3 is next. Like I said, I'm 99% sure at this point with the leaks we have. I'm not yet going to say I'm positive until Epic actually says. I know we have the loading screen that says, you know, the finale. I know we have the last reality. We have all that, but I just want to make sure I'm not promising any of you guys something that I can't deliver until Epic Games says we're getting Chapter 3. I'm not going to confirm it, but I'm pretty damn hyped. This chapter has been really, really good. I'm going to make another video potentially talking about whether I think this chapter was better than Chapter 1 and talking about a new map versus this map versus the old map. This was more just kind of a trip down memory lane to give you guys my thoughts and my review on Chapter 2. I think Epic Games has learned a lot, but I also think it's pretty unfair to compare Chapter 2 to Chapter 1 right now, just because Chapter 2 happened where is a global pandemic. COVID has really, really affected a lot of companies and the workflow of a lot of game developers. Just look at a lot of other games. We're in one of the biggest game droughts we've ever been in. Updates slowed down across the board for almost every major title and is only starting to pick up now. So I think gaming in general took a bit of a hit, and I think it's only fair to assume that Epic Games also struggled as a result of this, and I think it's only fair to give them some slack for that. We had some really long seasons that got extended that didn't have a lot of content. I think they were just kind of filling things out until they got their feet feet back on the ground and could start planning things. And I truly think that's where we're at now. I think we're at one of the most exciting times ever when it comes to Fortnite. I think 2022 is going to be the biggest year of Fortnite. I truly think that. It might not live up to the hype of original Fortnite just because it was something that was so new that took over the world, but I think that was also just right place, right time for Fortnite. And again, Fortnite did a good job to develop that and involve themselves in that, but I truly think Epic's actually going to do a better job developing Fortnite in 2022 than they've ever done. All right, guys, if you liked today's video, please chuck a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.